Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm sitting here on the roof of my Overland expedition rig, well, in front of really dirty solar panels. There's a couple of things in nomadic full-time travel and off-grid living that are incredibly important, but there's probably nothing more important than power. I get asked an awful lot, how much solar do I need? What do I need for battery reserve? And how do I build a system for my Overland expedition truck or for my off-grid setup? Today, I'm going to answer those questions and more. All right, guys, before I get started, there's a few things that I do want to say. Electricity, meaning solar and the battery system, the controllers that go along with that, and all of the related components to this can seem overwhelming and a little bit complicated. I want to bring this video to you today sort of in layman's terms, meaning let's not focus on the confusing part. At the end of the day, I can assure you, if you really want to build out your own system in your truck or in your off-grid property, you can do it. And that's the number one thing I want to leave you with. You can actually do it. It isn't that complicated. Now, admittedly, I watch a whole lot of YouTube, and that's kind of how I've learned over the years, and I've built a number of vehicles sort of with this method. So before I get going, I have a feeling this is going to require a little bit of coffee. And, you know, what good Overland channel wouldn't start out every video making coffee, right? A nice cup of coffee. All right, now we're ready to go.
My name is Michael Ladin. After visiting over 120 countries on 5 continents, I made the bold decision to sell all of my possessions and become a full-time nomad more than 4 years ago. Currently, I am traveling in my self-built ex-Army Overland expedition truck, complete with a KTM motorbike, bicycles, kayak, a one-wheel, and all the essentials needed to explore this incredible planet we call home. Join me as I share my adventures and stories from around the world.
All right, guys, I'm back sitting on my extremely dusty and dirty roof. The coffee hit the spot, and really the reason that I showed you the coffee was to prove a point. And we're talking about power. So each and every morning, I get up with the comfort of home and being able to make coffee with my Nespresso machine. And by the way, that is running on what we call 110 power, AC power, as opposed to DC power. So the reason I'm starting here on the roof is I'd like to sort of divide up this whole discussion of power into 3 distinct phases, if you will. The first is what I'm going to call the energy collection phase. And that is done with the solar panels that are on the roof. The second step, of course, is the storage phase, which is down below, and I'll get to that when I get into my garage. That is the batteries. And then what I would like to say is the third processee or stage in this whole operation is sort of the controls that go along with that and the monitoring system so you know what's going on. So all of that makes up this GoPower solar and battery system. So here on the roof of my truck, I have 10 solar panels from GoPower. Each one of the panels is 200 watts. And collectively, that means I have 2,000 watts of solar available to me here in the truck. And probably the first question you're asking is that enough? Is that too much? Is that a lot? And the answer to that, well, is a little bit complicated. Is it enough solar? Well, that depends on what I'm doing, and it greatly depends on what the conditions are, and I'm going to be talking about that a lot more. These panels are run in what we call series and parallel, and I'm going to start getting complicated here, and it's just certainly not worth the discussion, but for the sake of kind of explaining this to you, there are 10 panels, and I have 2 sets of them in 2 panels each, and 2 sets of them in 3 panels each. So to put this kind of in perspective, all of the panels are 12 volt. And when you combine panels together, you are basically increasing the voltage but lowering the amperage that goes in. The bottom line is, below me in my garage, I have what they call solar controllers, and there's 4 of those. An engineer told me that in the ideal situation, which, by the way, probably nobody does, you would have a controller for each panel. And that, in my case, that would mean 10 different controllers. So obviously that is 1, cost prohibitive, and 2, it is usually space prohibitive in your vehicle, right? So I've decided to go with 4 controllers, and in doing so, I've run these panels on the roof down in both series and parallel. So I'm going to show you that a little bit more as it goes into my garage system. But what you need to know is that the controllers take this power that comes from these panels and basically convert all of it into DC current that charge the battery system. And that's what really matters, because the key here is that the controllers are taking whatever amperage and whatever voltage that these panels are putting out and converting it into a power that the batteries can use to charge and then in turn store. So without getting into any more complication to that, because I will start confusing myself, the difference between series and parallel as it is. But just know that that's the way it is. And I'm going to show you some of the cables and the way that they get down to my garage. A question that I get asked an awful lot is, in relationship to what I just said, 2,000 watts of power, that seems like a lot, and it is. However, no matter how much power you actually have, meaning the rating of your solar panels, it doesn't mean that that's what you're going to get. So let's think about this for a second. And you can see from some of the video I'm showing you here, these panels are super dirty. So dirty panels obviously cut down on the amount of sunlight that's hitting them, and in turn being converted to use energy that you're able to use. There's also things in the sky called clouds. There's rain. There's all sorts of manner of inclement weather. Temperature is a factor in this. The hotter the panel that gets, the less effective it is. So all of these things come into play, and then obviously there's a thing called nighttime, right? So the panel can only work for X amount of hours a day in X amount of sunlight. So what I have noticed over my 5 years of living full-time on the road is, if you take 2,000 watts of solar as an example, in any given time, let's say I'm down here in southern Baja in extremely sunny conditions in midday, I find that I can bring in as high as 1,700 and even sometimes get close to my 2,000 watts of solar. However, if I'm farther north in latitude, and I'm in Montana as an example, in that very same sun in the middle of the day, I might be able to only generate 700 to 1,200 watts of solar. And then if a cloud goes over, or I'm parked in such a location where maybe there's a tree branch affecting some of the power, it's cut down from there. So you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Just because you have 2,000 watts of solar certainly does not mean you're getting anywhere near that amount of energy coming into the truck. So when people ask me, is there too much, is there an amount that's too much, basically, of too many panels? My quick answer is the maximum amount of solar that you can fit on your vehicle, do it. If you have a choice between, say, putting a nice little rooftop deck with some chairs or putting extra solar panels, I highly recommend you put the solar panels in because at the end of the day, you know, sitting in deck chairs is nice, but if you've got no power on board and you can't make your coffee, or you don't have any lights, or you can't run your fan, you're going to be one disappointed person. My truck is big, so I have, by definition, more square footage to work with. So 2,000 watts, yes, in comparison to a van or a smaller camper setup, is quite a bit of solar. All right, so you can see here, this is where the cables from the solar panels are running into these glands that are set up here on the roof. And they're obviously super, super dirty, and that doesn't really matter that much, but you can see that there are actually 4 separate glands here, and each set runs down to one of the solar controllers. While I'm here on the roof, I will show you 2 of the largest energy draws on the truck. One, here you can see the Gen 3 Starlink dish, and you would be surprised at how much energy that uses. Now, I have enough power on board that I can pretty much run my Starlink 365 days a year, non-stop, 24 hours a day, and it's convenient because even while I'm driving, I have internet. The other thing that uses the most amount of power here, as you can see, is my Dometic 12-volt air conditioner. I don't run it a whole lot, but I will tell you that when it's super hot out, I do. I have been asked, how long can I legitimately run this AC unit on battery power while I'm not plugged in anything? And the answer to that is, believe it or not, I have tested it in Yuma, Arizona at 95, 100 degrees out, and I am able to run it for at least 3 days continuously, believe it or not, without running out of battery power. All right, I'm in the garage now, out of the sun and the dust up there on the roof, and as you probably could tell, it is super dusty down here in Baja. And that obviously is affecting the solar panels production. Now, in fairness, I'm actually at a campground plugged in right now. So I'm also going to show you how that works being hooked up to shore power. But following the sort of path down from the solar panels on the roof, you can see up here in the ceiling, this is where each one of those runs from the gland comes down into the garage. And obviously the purpose of that gland is to keep it watertight, dust tight, and everything else. So these cables here are important, and they run to sort of what I would call the brains of the system. And that is these 4 solar controllers here. Each one is a 30 amp MPPT solar controller. What you need to know about that information is that essentially each one of these controllers can put 30 amps of power from the roof into the battery system. So combined total here, you really have, say, 120 amps of power that can go into the battery reserve, which I'll show you in a little bit. Setting up these controllers is actually pretty straightforward. As you can see, there are only a couple cables. There is a red and a black coming in, positive and negative, from the solar panel array on the roof. And then there's a red and black, positive and negative, going out, going down to the battery. There also is this cable here, which is an interconnect that goes between each solar controller, so they work together, and runs to the monitoring system, which I have in my habitat space that I'm going to show you. So on the way from the controller to the batteries, I installed these 2 bus bars, one obviously positive, one negative. And the reason for that is that way there are not so many connections going to the actual terminals on the battery. On the way out of the positive bus bar, there is also an inline fuse going to the battery. And you'll notice that throughout this system, you fuse pretty much everything to protect both the inputs and the outputs going between any of the pieces of equipment. If I take the cover off of this fuse, you'll see this is one gigantic 300 amp fuse. So from here, the power from the controllers goes into my bank of batteries. Now in my case, I have 4 advanced lithium iron phosphate batteries from GoPower. And each one of the batteries is the equivalent to 300 amp hours of power reserve. So for a grand total, I have 1200 amp hours of battery. Here you can see my bank of 4 batteries and the system that I built out of 80/20 aluminum extrusion to sort of mount everything in here, neat, organized, and secure. These are what they call smart batteries, and that means a couple things. One, they are compatible as a team, so they kind of work together in unison with all 4 of these units, and they work with the controller that I'm going to show you in my habitat. They also are Bluetooth accessible, and they are heated. So in the event that you are in inclement weather, and for those of you that know sort of anything about lithium batteries, they don't work super well when it gets to freezing or below. So these batteries have a built-in smart DC heater. The other advantage of lithium iron phosphate batteries is that they can take a charge much quicker than your traditional batteries. They have more power reserve, meaning that you can drain them virtually down to 0 and still have power, whereas a old style gel battery, you really can't go below 50% of the battery's rating. The other advantage is they're light. And when I say light, they're probably between 30 and 40% lighter than a traditional battery. Here you can see the interconnects between the batteries and the controller. And right here is the button to sort of on-off button that is blinking every so often here to indicate that they are in charge mode. So that completes the circuit of how I get power into my truck from the sun, which accounts for about 95% of the time. There are 2 other ways that I can get it in as well, one being a generator and shore power, and I will show you those. Although I run 95% on solar power and off-grid, as I mentioned, I have 2 ways of charging the truck without the sun. And before I get into that, I would like to mention a couple things that make my truck maybe a little bit unique. One, I do not have a DC to DC charger. Many nomads can charge their habitat system with the power generated off the alternator while they drive, and I chose not to do that. The second thing is my house system, my house battery system that runs the habitat and everything on board, as well as my refrigerator and whatnot in the cab, is completely separate from my truck battery system. So, as I said, there's 2 ways I can charge it without using sun power. One is this little cable right here that I have on the ground, and you can see I'm at a campground. I'm not plugged in right this second, but I can basically plug into a 15 amp, a 30 amp, various different outlets at campgrounds and generate power and charge the battery system. I'm going to show you that in the garage. The second way I can do it similarly, basically by plugging in through that same cable, is off of a Honda generator that I carry on board. And to be truthful, I think I've actually only started that maybe 3 or 4 times, and most of that is to just make sure that it continues to work. So that shore hookup is a 30 amp, 125 volt hookup, and you'll notice that it is located inside my garage, and I chose on this vehicle to do all of my hookups in a secure location inside the garage. I didn't want anything located on the outside of the truck, so I have that lockable trap door that all of my cables, including that shore power hookup and my water system, come through. Once the cable comes into the vehicle, it then connects to this GoPower IC3000 inverter charger. Now I'm going to get to the inverter part of that a little bit later. But the charger side of it is a 125 amp charger. So what that means is it can take shore power, put 125 amps into my battery bank. Now, I didn't mention before, but obviously it's 2,000 amp hours. And if you do the math on that, you can kind of figure out how long it will take to charge that entire bank if it was down at zero. The other question that I do get, and I wanted to address quickly here, is what ratio should my solar be to the battery? And I think a good rule of thumb is try to have double the amount of watts from the solar than you have amp hours of battery. So in my case, I have 2,000 watts of solar on the roof, and I have 1,200 amp hours of battery. So not quite 2 to 1, but that is a good relationship, because remember, this is one of the things that people totally forget about all the time. You can have a ton of solar, but if you don't have somewhere to store it, you have all this coming in during the day, and if it doesn't have anywhere to go, you're going to run out when you don't have the solar overnight. And vice versa. If you have too much battery and not enough solar on the roof, you'll have all of this battery supply that once you go through, you don't have enough solar to regenerate it fast enough. So because it's behind lube, I can't really show you the gauge wire that runs from this IC3000 GoPower converter. From shore power, it runs directly into the battery system to charge it without going through anything else. Very similarly to the way that the power runs from the solar controllers directly down to the battery. So those are the inputs coming into the battery. And once again, if I run the generator, that external cord that comes out of my truck, instead of plugging into shore power, it would plug into the generator. So effectively act the same as shore power. So that is the input side of my power system. That's how the power gets from either solar, the shore, or my generator into the battery system. Next up, we're going to be talking about the output side of that. How does all of the energy get into all of the components that I have on board the truck, both 12 volt and regular household AC power? And if you haven't been watching this series on this truck build, this is what you've missed. This was what was in the last episode.
I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. And did you know you can join for as low as $5 a month for exclusive behind the scenes Drive the Globe content?
I want to talk about the output side now. But before I do, I want to mention a couple things about the way that the batteries are actually hooked up. So there, like I mentioned before, there are 4 batteries. And the way to do it correctly for balancing is to hook all of your positive outputs on, let's say, the positive terminal of battery 1, and all of your negative outputs on the battery terminal on the negative side of battery number 4. So they're opposite against each other. And if you look here at my battery, that on the positive side, there are 5 other than the ones that the big connections that are going to the converter and going out to the main power supply to the battery. The outputs on that side, there are 5 of them, and we're going to talk about those now. On the negative side, you've got the same going out. However, there's also important to note that they're all hooked up to first a shunt, and then the shunt is hooked to the negative side of the battery. So that way, every single item that has a draw on my battery system is monitored through that shunt. And I'm going to show you that when I talk about the monitoring systems inside my habitat. So there are two kinds of power on board my truck. One being 12 volt, which is the vast majority of everything that I run is in 12 volt. So it's going to be much more efficient since the power is coming from a 12 volt battery system. Now, there are certain things that need to be what we call inverted, and those are converted into AC power, like household power that you would find in your home. Those are for outlets, the microwave oven, my coffee machine, my iMac computer, things like that that are going to run on household current. So let's start with the DC side. So 4 of those connections that leave the battery head to what I'm going to call my DC junction box, if you will. And I use Blue Sea marine grade 12 volt panels here. So you can see I have 2 of them, and every single circuit inside my truck that is 12 volt is hooked through these, with the exception of these 2 boxes right here, these Garmin Power Connect boxes. Now those control all of my lighting on board. So that's what makes up the 4 positive cables that are leaving the positive side of my battery system. In this truck, I conveniently located, and I realized from some of my past builds, I made what you call a chase. So I have a chase that runs from this garage up into my main console of my habitat. And the positive about that is in the future, if I do upgrades or changes or I need to add something, I can get more wires run from back here. But it's basically run as a trunk line. So everything terminates over there in the habitat area. And then from there, it's wired to each of the utilities and things that I need inside my habitat area. I've tried my best with these Blue Sea junctions to have as many circuits as possible. So in the event that something goes wrong, it's easier for me to trace what the problem is, whether I blow a fuse or not. I don't have multiple things on each circuit. So you can see I've got my stove oven, the toilet, USB connections for my desk, water closet fan, ventilation in the bedroom, gas and propane monitor. So everything has its own circuit. And yes, that meant running probably, oh God, I've got to have miles and miles of cable run here in this truck. But in the long run, it's well marked. I know where everything is. And if something goes wrong, I can easily fix it. And these Garmin Power Connect units here, highly recommend. They're run by Bluetooth, and it's interesting. So you can use them actually to control anything. In my truck, I'm using them all for lighting. And what's nice is you can see the lights on here. I can turn things on and off. So as an example, this is my garage lights. Boom, off go the garage lights on. So I can control it from these boxes. I can control it from my phone. When I show you inside the truck, it's all run on touchscreen on my iPads. So super convenient. In fact, I can control it from my Garmin Overland head unit inside the cab. So if I roll into camp, I can turn on whatever lighting, including my exterior lighting, before I even get out of the cab. Final wire that comes off of my battery system to power 12 volt is solely used for the Dometic air conditioner on the roof. And that runs through this fuse down here. Because that's such a high draw unit, it's got its own line and its own fuse. And that also, as I mentioned, runs through that shunt. So even when I turn on the AC and other stuff, I can easily monitor what my power usage is at all times. So I briefly showed you this piece behind me earlier and talking about its ability to convert to bring in shore power and generator power into the battery system. However, it is also a 3,000 watt inverter. So this GoPower unit is a big bad boy. This creates all of my AC home power on board the truck. And being that it's a 3,000 watt inverter, I can easily run microwave ovens, my vacuum cleaner, I mean, you can just run just about any kind of appliance off of this. So, and as I show you inside the Habitat, you'll see I also have outlets in my Starlink. I did not do the 12 volt conversion on this truck. A lot of people do. I've just found that I have enough power that I don't really need to do that conversion. So the Starlink is running on AC power as well, which is generated by this GoPower box right here. So obviously, and in particular, when you're running AC power as opposed to DC power, you've got a lot more voltage running through the lines. It is super important to have a circuit breaker. So you'll see as well in this truck, I have a circuit breaker, and I've broken it down by, like I said, I don't run a ton of things on this. So I've got my kitchen appliance, which is really my microwave. My computer is on one circuit. My outlets are on another, and the Starlink is on another one that's in here in the garage. So I have multiple places that I can plug things into, but everything is run through this distribution panel here. So let's go inside the Habitat area, and I will quickly show you how I monitor this system and kind of show you some of the things that it is controlling. So once again, in summary, everything that is powered on board my truck is either running through 12 volt, which is going through these Blue Sea panels back here, or it's running through this AC distribution box circuit breakers. And like I said, so everything is on its own circuitry. And that makes things A, safer, and B, way more organized if something goes wrong or I pop a breaker.
Thank you so much to all my build partners involved in Project Baobab. This would not have happened without you. And you'll be hearing a lot more about their products and services coming up in this series.
All right, I am now standing inside the Habitat in front of what I would like to call my command center. But before I go through all of the sort of gauges and whatnot that I have to monitor what my power is, we talked about the power usage. And people ask, you know, how much power do you use? And that's certainly an equation that you should try to figure out. And that can determine how much solar and battery you decide to go with inside your own rig. But you can see right now, just for the sake of this video, I have just about everything going. I've got the iMac is going behind me. You can kind of see all around here, all the lighting is on. Obviously, Starlink is running for my internet. And then I have things like, you know, the coffee machine here, the toaster. I've got, if you walk back over this way, you can see inside the bathroom there, all the lights are on. By the bed, if I come around this side, you can see I have outlets there and things to charge my cell phone on 12 volt and whatnot. Up above here is that Dometic AC. The television's over there. So there's a lot of stuff going on board my truck, and it's being monitored, and I can kind of keep track of my usage. So I've got a couple different systems that I look at, and they're all from GoPower. First on, you can see here I have the solar remote control here, and that's basically just showing me what's going on with my solar panels. And then I've got another monitor here that is largely the battery shunt. So that's just a different way of monitoring it, because I think I mentioned before, I have a Bluetooth setup with the batteries, the GoPower IC3000 inverter converter, and all of the solar controllers are all hooked together and report through this one big terminal right here. But I like to have backups for everything. So you can see right now I'm at about 81% battery. I unplugged yesterday. I am at a campground, but I wanted to kind of show you everything. So it is really cloudy out today, actually, which is kind of rare down here. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I am getting just about 993 watts of solar coming in, just for a reference. And it is putting into my system right now 30 amps of power. Now that's 30 amps in excess of what it's bringing in. So if you do the math, I've got 65 amps of power coming from my roof right now, and 35 is going in to the battery. So 30 amps, currently I'm using 30 amps per hour right this second, running, lighting and Starlink and the computer. And of course I've got, if we can peek down in here, we've got 2 refrigerators going and whatnot. So these control panels here, I won't get into too much detail about things, but you can see on this screen here, you can flick through here, you can look at your battery, your solar controller, your inverter. You can monitor everything as well as on the app on your phone. So it's super nice. I think a lot of us are probably sort of, I don't know, power geeks, if you will. And I'm not going to lie and say that I don't look at this a lot. So I'm always taking, in fact, I usually freak out if I go below, say, 90% on this truck. But as you can see, all night long, obviously, I had all of this stuff going, and I very rarely get below 80%. Now, if it was a situation where it was super cloudy out, and or raining for multiple days, and say it's hot and I was running the AC. I'm not running the AC right now. And if I click that on, you will see a marked difference probably on the amount of power that I've got going into my battery. So below these GoPower things, I have my, and I can tell you the story real quick. I had an old iPad I was about to chuck, to be honest with you. It doesn't work without being plugged in. And I said, you know what, I might as well use it with the Garmin PowerSwitch. So all of my lighting here on the screen here, you just click and everything is push button for all of my lighting controls, which is nice and cool. And then while I'm talking about electronics, below that I've got an indoor-outdoor weather station. And then right here we've got, I'm not going to say her name because she'll start talking to me, the Amazon device. And that plays all my music and whatnot. So it's sort of a high-tech truck, but that's where we're at nowadays. A lot less wires to be run when you can run things on Bluetooth and whatnot. So I hope you guys got through at least part of this video. I know it's much longer than most of my videos. I appreciate all of you for following along on the channel. And be sure to check out the rest of the series about building this truck. And if you've got questions about anything I talked about today, please don't hesitate to leave it down in the comments or shoot me a message. And as always, I will see you next week.
Thanks for joining me today. I really hope that you liked this video. And if you did, give a big thumbs up. Please subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next video.